Stand by now for the 12th edition of See It Now with Edward R. Murrow, which originates in the actual control room of Studio 41 in New York City. Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America, in cooperation with CBS Television, presents the distinguished reporter and news analyst Edward R. Murrow in See It Now, a document for television, based on the week's news and told through the actual voices and faces that made the news. Edited and produced by Mr. Murrow and Fred W. Friendly. A public service of Aluminum Company of America, the nation's leading producer of aluminum. Now, speaking to you from the actual control room of Studio 41 is the editor of See It Now, Edward R. Murrow.
Good afternoon. Each time there is an aircraft wreck, it is followed by an investigation and then a great deal of discussion about instruments to aid in the landing of aircraft in bad weather. As a matter of fact, a commercial aircraft lands or takes off in this country every 8 seconds. And in the course of a month, they will fly more than enough mileage for 1,000 trips around the world. Their record is remarkable. This afternoon, with a little luck, we're going to take you out to Idlewild Airport. And there you will see a United Airlines DC-6 come in blind, flying only on instruments. So we'll now call the tower out at Idlewild.
Hello, Mr. Murrow. I'm Roger Sullivan, Chief of Traffic Control.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sullivan. Who's in the radar shack today?
Hiya, Mr. Murrow. John Fitzgerald.
All right. Now, about that DC-6 that's upstairs, where is it now?
Come in, Captain Smith.
Hello, Mr. Morrow. This is Captain Smith with the United Airlines trip 6018. Our altitude is 1,000 feet. We're approaching Taco Bay. We're expecting to land in approximately 3 minutes.
Right. Now, can we pick up that plane on the radar scope, please?
Sure can, Mr. Murrow. This is the aircraft right here proceeding outbound. And incidentally, sir, this is where you're broadcasting from.
Well, that's a good thing to know where I am. There have been occasions when I've been somewhat in doubt. Now, this instrument landing, ILS, as I understand it, that's the standard procedure. Could you, Mr. Sullivan, explain in a few well-chosen words?
Well, I'll try, Mr. Murrow. It's used when ceilings and visibility are poor. It consists primarily of 2 components, 2 radio beams. We have a vertical beam, which is projected down the center line of the runway, called the localizer. We have a horizontal beam, which is tilted to give the desired approach angle to the aircraft, called the glide path. Now, these 2 components activate this cross needle indicator in the aircraft. As an example, now, when the aircraft is making an approach, should he drift to the right of course, as I'll show you here,
yes,
the needle is deflected, as you see there. Upon making a left turn, the needle returns to the course. The same holds true for the glide path. Should the aircraft drift below the glide path, you'll notice the needle being deflected upward. By decreasing rate of descent, he returns to the center of the meter. By keeping the needles crossed, it takes him right to the runway.
Well, now, what's the use of radar in this connection, Mr. Sullivan?
All right, let's get back to the radar scope, Mr. Sullivan. This Fitzgerald in the radar tent.
Right. Go ahead, Fitzgerald.
All right, here's the United Airline aircraft now at 2 miles. This is the glide path he's coming down, and this is his course, which will eventually take him to the runway here. I will now give that information to the pilot on this monitored GCA. United 6018, your range now is 1 1/2 miles from point of touchdown. Glide path good. You're right on the glide path. Your course is good. You're on the localizer course. Now, as you can see, he's coming right down the glide path. He has a very good rate of descent. This is 1 mile here. He's now 1 mile and about 200 feet. He's on course here. Now he's over the middle mark, and I'll transmit that to the captain. United 6018, you're just past the middle marker. You're on course between the approach lights. Your glide path is good. You're right on the glide path. Very good rate of descent. The runway is directly ahead of you. Still on course. Still on the glide path. This is the glide path here. You're over the end of the runway now, and now we'll switch to the end of the runway and catch the aircraft landing.
There she is, Mr. Murrow, right in front of your camera on the runway.
you very much indeed, gentlemen. Is he going to swing her around now? We'd like to see Captain Smith before we leave Idlewild. There he comes. Reversed his propellers rather quickly, didn't he? There is Captain Smith in his DC-6, taxiing back up the strip. You can see his windows were blacked out. Thank you very much at Idlewild. There's Captain Smith in the window now. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and out. The governor of a great state goes to Washington, has a long talk with President Truman, gets his picture on the front page of 2 national magazines, and immediately the dopesters began writing stories about him as to the next president of the United States. We have out in Chicago Governor Adlai Stevenson, an old friend. How are you, Governor?
I'm fine, Mr. Morrow.
Good.
How are you, sir?
Very well indeed. We start with an easy question. Are you a candidate for the presidency?
No, Mr. Morrow, I'm a candidate for re-election as governor of Illinois.
Well,
I've found that job about the full measure of my capacity and my strength, and then some.
Well, Governor, could you tell us anything about your conversations with President Truman?
Well, I can tell you that I wanted to get the president's views on mine safety legislation. I have personally a very strong feeling that the state should not abdicate all of their responsibilities. I deplore the tendency of government to migrate from the communities to the states and then from the states to Washington. And I discussed that situation with him. Personally, I feel very strongly, and I found that he does too, that the state should discharge this responsibility. But if they're unable to adopt proper laws and enforce them properly, then Uncle Sam must. And I also discussed, as you probably suspect, politics, the national and the international scene in these anxious times in which we seem destined to live.
Well, Governor Stevenson, do you have any ambitions for higher office than governor of Illinois?
No, sir, I do not.
Well, now, since you won't talk national politics, let's talk Illinois politics. What have you done?
Well, I'm always glad to do that.
What have you done in your 3-year term as governor so far that has given you the most personal sense of satisfaction and accomplishment?
Well, we've done a good many things in the past 3 years here, Mr. Merrill, but I suppose if you were to ask me to indicate just those which gave me the utmost satisfaction, I would say probably that we had succeeded, I believe, not perhaps wholly, but we've made a very conscious effort to eliminate the payroller. That's the man who draws a salary paid by the innocent taxpayer who does nothing for his salary. He does political service, but not public service. And then we've taken the state police out of politics. We've taken the Illinois Commerce Commission out of politics. We've improved the quality of treatment and care in our mental institutions. Some 46,000 unfortunate patients whom the state has to take care of day and night, 7 days in the year. We've now, I believe, are in the forefront of the nation in the management of our mental institutions. And we've enforced the anti-gambling laws in the state. We've enforced the overweight truck laws. At long last, after more than 20 years, we've adopted at last an adequate program for the restoration of our deteriorated highways and our city streets and our rural roads. And we've also taken the first steps in 45 years to reform, modernize our old and rigid state constitution. We've extended the civil service, the merit system. We've increased the salaries of all state employees, and we've managed to recruit for state service in Springfield some people of a very exceptional quality that you don't ordinarily find in the service of the states.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Governor Stevenson. You have told us enough, I think, as to what you have done in Illinois to give us some idea of what your objectives would be if, when, and at some future date you decide to seek federal office. Thank you so very much indeed.
Not at all, thank you.
Most grateful to you. Occasionally, we have politicians on this program, but always very briefly, because we feel that we are critically nonpartisan in this. We have had a number of politicians. There is one who isn't making any speeches because he's in Paris wearing a uniform. But a friend of his has come along to sing a song for him. We haven't sufficient room in this studio either for Mr. Irving Berlin or for a piano, so he is sitting just next door. He has rewritten the lyrics to They Like Ike, and he calls it now I Like Ike, and here is Mr. Irving Berlin to sing it for you. All right, Mr.
Thank you, Ed. Incidentally, I wonder if you know that this song that I'm to sing now partly was written 2 years before the song went into Call Me Madam. As a matter of fact, in 1948, when there were rumors of or talk of General Eisenhower being a possibility, I started writing its campaign song then. Then when the show came along, it fit the situation, so this is really a song that I started writing in 1948. So here it is. I like Ike, I'll shout it over a mic or a phone or from the highest steeple. I like Ike, and Ike is easy to like, stands alone. The choice of we the people, a leader we can call. Without political noise, he can lead us all. As he led the boys, let's take Ike, a man we all of us like, tried and true, courageous, strong, and human. Why, even Harry Truman says I like Ike. There it is, Ed. I hope you like it.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Irving Berlin. As I indicated earlier, we have no particular preference in matters of presidential candidates, but if any other candidate comes along with a song that is as well written or as well sung as the one that Mr. Berlin has just given us, we'll try to find time for it. It's time now for our commercial. You may think it's a commercial for Packard automobiles or for old-time vaudeville, but actually both help Alcoa in their story.
Not too many years ago in vaudeville, there was an act known as Throw Out the Clutch, which used to be one of the funniest moments in the theater. Today, Packard has thrown out the clutch, the ultramatic transmission which has replaced the old-fashioned foot pedal, makes for easier and better driving. Alcoa engineers played an important part in this development. They worked for months helping to design and make a better automatic transmission. To be a better automatic transmission, this one had to be more complex, but at the same time stronger and lighter. Alcoa's answer was to cast the turbine blades not in many sections, but in one piece. Cast them in plaster, a little-known process, with one of Alcoa's strong and durable aluminum alloys. The result was the strength, lightness, and smoothness necessary for the performance demanded by Packard. At Alcoa's Automotive Development Laboratories in Cleveland, Ohio, the new turbine blade was tested thoroughly, subjected to every possible stress and strain. Although it will never turn more than 5,000 revolutions per minute at a car's highest speed, the aluminum turbine blade was placed in the whirl pit and whirled up to its breaking point, 12,000 RPM, more than twice the strength it will ever need. Today, as car after car moves along the assembly line, the results of Alcoa's designing, producing, and testing moves with them to give you the assurance that the Alcoa aluminum parts of the ultramatic transmission will serve you faithfully and well. In this way, Alcoa since 1888 has continued to meet its responsibility as the nation's first and leading producer of a vital metal, aluminum by Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America.
The Cold War has been in progress for something more than 6 years. The city of Berlin is one of the focal points. We sent our reporter Dick Hotelet and our cameraman Bill McClure to Berlin in order to give you some picture of the situation as it exists in Berlin today.
At the end of the late war, the peacemakers drew lines on a map as they have done so often before. Germany was divided into zones of occupation. On the left of your screen, the area assigned to the Allies. On the right, the Russian zone of occupation.
The city of Berlin was left entirely surrounded by communist-controlled territory. A small island, reached by a railroad and a 110-mile ribbon of concrete. A superhighway called an Autobahn. Now, most of what West Berlin eats, wears, smokes, and uses comes in this way, and its manufactured products go out the same way. It's a delicate link, a vital artery passing through Russian-controlled territory. High above the ruins of Berlin, the Freedom Bell can be heard in all four sectors. What's left of Berlin is divided into four parts. The French control 110 square miles, the British 165, the United States 210, and the Russians 402. Nearby is the Brandenburg Gate. Behind it, the communist empire stretches to the Pacific. This is the scene of the last battle for Berlin. At this spot, a man named Hitler died. This is Treptow Park, a Soviet war memorial, built by German labor. This is Stalin Boulevard in the Russian sector, bleak and ill-kept. This is the Kurfürstendamm in the western sector, the principal shopping area. A pretty remarkable job of cleaning up and rebuilding. Only the width of a street separates the sectors. This is no man's land, the famous Potsdamer Platz. Here you can feel the tension and occasionally feel a hurled brick or a chunk of stone. The music you hear comes from a Soviet propaganda horn. It's Ami Go Home, a parody suggesting that everybody but the Russians go home.
Sag Goodbye dem Vater rein, rühr nicht an sein Töchterlein, Lorelei, solang du singst, wird Deutschland...
On the Potsdamer Platz, we built a high electric sign to flash news to the east, where all news is controlled. The Russians built a sign on their side to block it. This is a sort of proving ground for propaganda, and the communists ring all the changes. If you're a German, you keep to your own side of the street in the Potsdamer Platz. It's a favorite spot for kidnapping. We asked at the West Police Station about these political kidnappings.
Here's the Berlin Police Department section of political kidnapping. In the last 3 years, about 400 cases have been investigated.
The Russians will use kidnapping as a political weapon to demoralize the people of West Berlin. But the peoples of West Berlin will not surrender.
But these were just names on the police blotter. Germans who went out to work one day and just vanished behind the curtain. We asked the police to take us to the wife of one of the victims. She has 3 children. Her husband disappeared. But she is more fortunate than most, for she knows he is in a communist prison. At least he's still alive. Her name is withheld for obvious reasons.
I'm the mother of 3 children and have a very difficult fate now, because my husband disappeared in the Eastern Zone and is now about 1.5 years in a Soviet prison. One day he had to make a travel for a Western news agency and he didn't come back. Now, after half a year, I heard that my husband was in a Soviet prison and that they gave him 4 years only for working for a Western agency. Then I was allowed to see him one day, and now I can see him every 6 weeks for 15 minutes with a Volkspoliceman sitting beside us. And it's so very, very hard.
Spies and agents float back and forth across the sector lines. Radio transmitters fire their propaganda at close range. Rias, the American radio station, broadcasts a daily list of communist spies.
Achtung, Berlin Wilhelmsruh. Die Angehörigen der Hauptverwaltung Seepolizei werden vor folgenden Agenten des Staatssicherheitsdienstes gewarnt.
VP-Inspekteur Gestokowski, etwa 45 Jahre alt. Hat die
In Berlin, it takes guts to edit a newspaper. If the Russians should move, this editor would be a dead man in a matter of hours, and he knows it. His reporters have been kidnapped, and his editorials have more cutting edge than many written thousands of miles from the communist menace.
The largest West Berlin newspaper. We and the other papers of West Berlin do our best to give our people the truth. For truth and facts are the basic condition for freedom. Had we not given our people the truth during the terrible years before, during, and after the blockade, the Berliners might have lost their will to resist the communist pressure and their freedom. And we shall continue to give our people the truth and to make Berlin an island of truth in the sea of communist lies.
In Berlin, on a windy day, the gray dust from the mounds of rubble gets in your eyes. Rubble is a chief occupation. You may find a piece of copper pipe, a wash basin, a child's toy, or a decomposed body. There is always brick. Something like 1 billion bricks have been chipped clean, neatly stacked, and sold since D-Day. There are another 5 billion bricks still to be manicured with German thoroughness. At night, the scars seem less real. But there are islands of gaiety in this sea of drab destruction. In spite of unemployment, uncertainty, and a never-ending tension, nightclubs flourish. And if you prefer horses in your nightclubs, you can find that in West Berlin, too. You find less anti-American sentiment in Berlin than in the rest of Germany. The West Berliner has a choice of being for the Americans or for the Russians, and his mind is made up. Most of them probably don't love us, but the alternative is just across the street. There is less anti-Semitism in Berlin than in Western Germany. Maybe in Berlin there is so much fear and hatred for the Soviets, there isn't enough to go around. Dr. Paul Hertz puts it this way.
I'm a German Jew, and I have been in politics all my life. From 1920 till 1933, I was a member of the German Reichstag. 2 years ago, I returned to Berlin and was elected senator for banking and credit. When I returned, my first question to the head of the Jewish community was, is there any anti-Semitism in Berlin? His answer was no. And I found in my old neighborhood less anti-Semitism than I saw in the 10 years I lived in New York and Los Angeles. There is no such thing in Berlin as a restricted neighborhood or a restricted apartment house.
We asked correspondent Dick Hottelet to call on the mayor of West Berlin, Ernst Reuter. On the way, they passed Mrs. Reuter, doing the family marketing.
Ja? Wie teuer ist der Wein?
1,20.
Ah, das ist sehr teuer, aber er ist sehr schön.
Sehr gut.
Ja.
Holländerwein.
Yeah, it's beautiful but very expensive. We are glad to have them. During the blockade we have nothing of fresh vegetables or fruits and so on. But the prices are very high. And Berliners hope very much the prices are not more going up.
During the airlift, Mayor Reuter was the most calm, steady, and courageous man in the city.
Take the political initiative from the Soviet Union.
I think we have to take the initiative just now to make the free access to Berlin much more possible than it is up to now.
Mayor Reuter, you've had long experience with the Soviet Union. Do you think that Western pressure would have any success?
Oh, certainly, certainly. You may say what you want to say against the Soviets. They are masters in the political struggle, and they are very sensitive. If you are embarrassing them by answering them with the same means they are using, we have to impress the imagination of the people under their rule, of the people in East Germany, and the people in the satellite states.
It requires courage of a high order to leave your home in the East with only what you can carry on your back and try to reach the uncertain safety of West Berlin. But the refugees from the communist side keep slipping across. Their courage adds more problems to the hard-pressed authorities in the West.
I'm Dr. Elisabeth Gerhardt, the head doctor of the Refugee Center in Berlin. During the last 3 years, I had to examine as a doctor 175,000 refugees who fled from the Soviet zone.
We put them up in our 44 camps in West Berlin. We get 300 refugees a day and even sometimes 700. The refugee problem is an international one, and it must be solved.
The battle lines are clearly defined in Berlin, and the propaganda as recognizable as a Russian uniform. This communist youth rally was one of the Soviets' maximum effort. On our side, our chief weapon is the truth. But sometimes even the truth is outmatched. The Freedom Bell is one of the symbols of our campaign there. Perhaps more so, the U.S. troops practicing riot control at Tempelhof Airport. But we talk in terms of divisions, and the Russians in armies. And a free Berlin lives from day to day, constantly aware that a reckless order from the Kremlin could in an instant snuff out its lifeline and turn the Cold War hot. In recent months, the Russians in both Berlin and Vienna have been cautious and correct. There has been very little difficulty of any kind. But the fact remains that Berlin is a hostage at the end of that 100-mile corridor, sustained only by the courage of its people and by the determination and unity of the Western powers. That was our effort to give you some glimpse of Berlin today. Good afternoon and good luck.
This is aluminum. Nature made it light. Alcoa made it strong, plentiful, and low in price. This is aluminum, a better kind of snow shovel that makes the job of digging out less tiring. Light, easy-to-handle snow shovels of Alcoa aluminum never rust. Made from a durable aluminum alloy, they stay bright and strong, as good as new, give years of service. There will be more and more snow shovels of Alcoa aluminum when our country's defense needs have been met. Aluminum from the ever-expanding facilities of America's foremost producer, Alcoa, Aluminum Company of America. This is the CBS television network.